If you're a paranormal investigator, a spiritual healer, or someone who is just very interested in clearing your own genetic ghosts, be sure you watch this video on poor farms and insane asylums. Hi everyone, my name is Diana Palm, the Love Witch, and today we're going to be talking about genetic poverty. How much do you actually know about your ancestors? I've been doing paranormal work for over 18 years, and one of my favorite places to go in to investigate and heal is poor farms. I closely link poor farms with insane asylums because often they served as both. But traditionally, the poor farm was established to house people that could not support themselves financially. These properties were in every part of the world, but in the United States, mostly in rural locations, and they were run by the county. They housed convicts, the mentally ill, alcoholics, the elderly, and the disabled. The inmates were often referred to as paupers, and that's why at these locations, most of the historic poor farms also have their own pauper cemetery, where the inmates would actually get buried. My first exposure to poor farms was in about 1979 when my family moved across the country and bought land right beside a historic poor farm. We didn't really have any idea what a poor farm was in those days. We had been told that this old brick structure was actually an abandoned nursing home. And it was an abandoned nursing home at the end of its run, but earlier on in its history, it began as a poor farm. This has always piqued my curiosity because I spent a lot of time there as a child. Of course, I didn't know that I was a medium. I didn't know that I was so spiritually sensitive, but I felt drawn to spend all my time there. And I felt very connected to the energies of those that resided there. Many of the neighborhood kids took turns breaking into this building to explore. I spent hours and hours exploring in this large brick building. It was as if time stood still. Everything was still in place. All the furnishings were still there. The telephones were still hooked up. And I wondered what happened to them. Why was this building empty? Where did they go? Poor farms were operational, which means that when people would come and stay at a poor house located on a poor farm, that they would actually be able to work the farm to support themselves, to grow their own food, to be able to can the food for winter, and even be able to farm animals on that very land. Because of the Social Security Act in 1935, many of the poor farms and poor houses closed, and the ones that remained open became nursing homes, which made sense because many of the residents by that time were aged patients. It was required that every able-bodied person was able to work at the poor farm. But there were many people that were not able to actually function physically or work upon the farm. Eventually, the poor farms were replaced by subsidized housing and homeless shelters. There were other paupers that were included at poor farm facilities. If somebody was found begging in public, they would immediately be picked up and taken into residence at a poor farm. There were also single mothers that had no ability to support themselves and children at that time. So many times there were single mothers with young children at the poor farm. There were people with drug and alcohol addictions, poor people, mentally ill people, and those that didn't have a family and had nowhere to fit in society. When I found the large brick building abandoned in the woods by my family's home, I could think of nothing better than to break in and explore and find out what this building was about. It was situated on about 80 acres or so with its own pauper cemetery in the woods. Now, I used to spend all my time in the woods, horseback riding, walking, sledding, all kinds of outdoor activities. I basically spent all my time in the woods. The cemetery was located between the poor farm and my parents' house. So we had found the cemetery pretty early on in our explorations, but we had only ever found 3 of the headstones. Rumor had it that there were many more, so we spent countless days and years looking for the rest of the headstones. We knew there were more, but we just couldn't find them. It wasn't until about 10 years ago when a very well-known dowser went out into those woods and detected the presence of 75 other burials right beside the initial graves that we had found as children. Of course, because they were paupers, they did not have headstones. Pauper cemeteries are rarely marked. Many times they were unclaimed humans. People did not have the money to afford headstones for these individuals who passed. And that's probably the part of me that made me the most sensitive to these individuals, feeling that they were kind of the neglected, the unwanted, and unrecognized members of our society. And I've always been very passionate about bringing healing to these souls and ensuring that they actually get to the right place. Exploring in this building made up a significant part of my youth. The energy always stuck with me. It was always something that I earmarked that I wanted to come back to. I had been raised in California and frequently went to ghost towns where I was also affected by the spiritual energy. So having the same kind of experience here in this abandoned building in the woods continued to really enhance my passion and desire to help those less fortunate and to really make sure that those souls found their peace. I looked at boxes and boxes of black and white photos. I read many love letters. In fact, I often felt surrounded by the spirits of those that had resided there and often called them by name, which of course I learned from the love letters, but I felt their presence with me and I felt gently guided to explore the building where I found hidden doorways and keys to every locked door, and it was quite an amazing adventure. I didn't know then that I would be coming back many years later to actually bring healing and release to the spirits that were trapped there. Many years later, I had formed my own paranormal investigation team with people that were interested in paranormal rescue work. So I literally would train other mediums how to cross over ghosts and how to do healings in haunted locations. It felt to me like a soul contract was being fulfilled when we got the opportunity to go back into this facility to do a paranormal investigation and clearing. The property was sold but took on a different identity and business, but it was still accessible and at a certain point became a bed and breakfast. Going back to this property as an adult was quite an extraordinary experience because I felt that same familiar energy come around me. I felt very much surrounded by the spirits that I talked to in my youth, and it was really warm and inviting experience to be there. My team brought all the regular paranormal equipment. We had EMF detectors, digital recorders, spirit boxes, the ovilus. We had infrared cameras. We had all the equipment and had tremendous amount of response from the spirits. They were very active, very communicative. And what we had decided to do was an investigation on the first night, followed by a spiritual healing and clearing the very next morning. As my team explored the property, we got a tremendous amount of paranormal activity evidence recorded on our recordings. Some of my favorite EVPs that were recorded at that property was when we were communicating with a spirit back and forth and asked what they died from, and they said working disease. I thought that was fascinating, so I did a little research. And back in that day, when somebody had had a heart attack, they called it working disease. We also heard comments referring to having been put in jail. And that really stood out to me because I knew that the Pauper farm could have had convicts, but also we learned that many insane asylums and Pauper farms would put some of their more troubled patients in cages. When it came time to do the clearing and the healing, we were doing a pre-recording and heard some spirits talking to each other about what we were preparing to do. Most properties that are haunted also have spirit guardians at the property. Now, the spirit guardians cannot cross over the ghosts, but they do watch over and interact with the ghosts that are at the property. So in this case, the spirit guardians were leading them to work with us, to tell them, trust them. And that's literally what they said. We recorded them saying, she's good, trust her. One of the workers at the inn was very nervous about being in our company. She had shared that her church was very much against this type of work and really seemed to have a misunderstanding for what it was that we were there to do. So we invited her to stay and witness the healing part of our service. It was a beautiful and powerful transition. We were able to clear many trapped and lost souls that had resided there for nearly 100 years. And in their parting comments, they yelled out things like, thank you, I love you, goodbye, which we were able to record. The woman at this point that was watching was absolutely teary-eyed and told us that she was going to go back and tell the congregation at her church how impactful this was, how meaningful it was, and what important work this is. So that was a really great experience to be able to educate somebody as to the need for crossing over souls that are trapped at these forgotten locations, at these abandoned locations, or properties that have been somehow lost in time with the souls that were also lost in time that nobody claimed. I feel it's important to recognize them now and to do the right thing by them by crossing them over, moving them into the light, and clearing hauntings at these historic sites. Many people are afraid to see this element of society. At one point, these people were hidden away, out of sight, out of mind, and the rest of the healthy population would just carry on with life and forget about these people who were really struggling, who were suffering emotionally and on many levels spiritually. Many of you may have even had genetic relatives reside in a poor farm or insane asylum. Oftentimes, their ghosts still reside at those locations, but their genetic ghosts also live within you. Those wounds that they experienced, they live within you, and it's time to heal them. These are not personal scars. These are the scars of humanity. To all the unwanted, unloved, neglected, abused, looked over, helpless, and not protected people, this is an energy that we need to shift and heal to raise the vibration on earth, to cross over the souls that have been impacted by it, that have suffered with it, and that have marked your very DNA, that have left that genetic imprint, that genetic ghost within the cells of your body. So if you feel a calling to do this work and to step forward and activate yourself as a healer, or just to take care of your own genetic ghosts, be sure you check out my guide, Genetic Ghosts, where I actually teach you how you can tap in with the energy to heal your own genetic ghosts. And if you're interested in moving that further out and expanding your abilities to heal into these haunted locations and help the lost souls, then you'll really enjoy the 10% discount on my Paranormal Rescue Medium course. I've also included a 15-page guide for how you can stay spiritually protected while doing this work. I believe that this is my calling, and I know there are many other people waking up to their spiritual calling right now. And the more we can shift this energy on earth, the more the living can also receive the benefits of this healing. If you're interested in helping these souls experience love and find lasting peace, be sure you download my guide, Genetic Ghosts. If you like this video, be sure to give me a like down below, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thank you for being here, everyone. I can't wait to see you in the next episode.